Okay, now we just came back from a break, and a few people were talking at break, and we were trying to clarify a few things. Remember, the terminology for this stuff is going to seem really gobbly-gobbly to you for a while because you're not used to it. But just remember a couple things. First of all, everything is an object, and every object, just like in real life, has characteristics about it. And those characteristics are called properties. And then each object, most of the objects that are alive anyway, are all programmed to respond to things, or they can be told to do things. And when I tell the program to display the word quit, I'm just setting a property on it. But when they click on this button, it triggers an event for that button. And in my code, I can handle that event. That's why they call this an event handler. That's kind of the new terminology. And I'm handling the event by saying if they click on this button that I called btn quit, remember that's its name property, I'm telling the form itself, by using the word me, which refers to the form, dot, close. And close is just simply an action that I'm telling the form what to do with itself, and that's just called a method. So properties are descriptors of an object. Methods are actions that you, the programmer, tell it what to do. The customer doesn't tell it what to do. And an event is what is triggered, or what happens after somebody does something to an object. Remember, you come up and slug me, I'm going to respond. When you slug me, that triggers an event. That triggers a reaction in me. Okay? So properties are descriptors. Methods are things you do as a programmer to tell an object what to do. An event is what happens when somebody does something to that object. Now in this particular case, I want to show you something. When they click on this print button, or they click on the clear, nothing happens. The only code that we've written so far is for what happens when they do the quit event. So let me go back and let's look at how we can add some code to the clear button. Now, let me ask you a question. If I want to, this is the very first time, if I want to create an event handler or a click event for my clear button, what should I do? Chuck, what would you do? You remember how I made one for this one? Do you remember? Not sure? Karen, do you remember? I double clicked on quit. Now when I double click on it, it takes me back where I was because it knows I already made one. It's not going to make another one for you, so that's nice. So to make one for the clear event, Karen, I'm going to just simply double click. Thank you. Now, here's what I want to show you. Visual Basic always puts these things at the bottom as it keeps building, and you'll notice now I got a ton of space. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to do this and move them up a little bit so I can see. I like to move that down so I don't inadvertently mess with it. But notice what we have now. I have two click events, or two event handlers, or two subroutines, whatever you want to call them. One for btn quit. When they click on that, it's going to close the application. But there's a new one now for btn clear. For when they click on that, I can write programming instructions to tell it what to do when they click on that one. And I'm hoping that you're able to see how important it was that we renamed our buttons. You see that? If you would have had it button 1, button 2, there's no way that you're going to remember what button 1 and button 2 is. So it's really important to rename them. My advice is to always rename them before you create these event handlers. Otherwise, it's not going to have the right name. If that ever happens, you just erase it and go to your button and redo it. Okay? Now there's another way to make these things, but I'm not going to bother you with that right now. All right, let's do this. Let me show you. I'm going to go back in design mode. Let me show you what I want this to do. And remember now, it's going to do what I tell it to do. When they click on this, we already know that's going to quit it. But when they clear this, here's what I want it to do. When they click on that, I want it to erase whatever in this text box. Then I want it to erase whatever in this text box. And I want it to erase whatever's in this label. All right, now there's nothing in them at the moment, obviously, but we want it to be able to erase it. Because right now, if I run the program, if I type something in here, and I just type junk in here, now I can't type anything in the label. If I click clear, nothing happens. Okay, but I want to be able to clean that all up. So I'm going to quit this, and let's go back into our code. Now you'll notice that I now have two tabs. one for Form 1 in design mode and one for Form 1 in the code. All right. Now let's go in here to our clear event, and I want to show you something new. This is how you clear a text box. If you want to make a text box erase, you type in the name of the text box. Now what you have to do is kind of remember what these things are, and that's always my challenge. TXT, I called it first name, I think, didn't I? Okay, TXT first name, and then you do a dot. And now if I was to do this, watch. If I was to type it like that and do the dot and nothing happened, that would tell me instantly that Visual Basic doesn't recognize my object or what I'm talking about, and there's no way in the world it's ever going to work. So don't try to trick it. So I'm going to rename it correctly. It comes down here, and I want you to write this down. For Visual Studio 5, this wasn't true in 03. So if you inherit some older project, this is not true. What? Chuck wanted to know how I got to that. When they click on this button for clear, right here, when they click on that, I want it to erase what's in here. Right, erase. Okay. So we're going to say txt first name dot, and they have a new method called clear. Now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to hit the C key, so it'll drop me down here a little closer, and I'll type L, and you notice it brings me right down into that. And I'm going to hit the Tab key to put it in. Please don't type these things in, because even though that clear is easy, there are going to be other ones that are much longer, and you're going to mess them up. Just let Visual Studio pop in those words for you. TXT first name dot clear, and then I hit enter. Now I want it to clear the second one, right? So what do I type? Judy, what do you want me to type? Whatever I called it. Do you remember what I called it? I don't either. What did I call it? Last name. Thank you. Good heavens, good thing you're all here. Okay, last name, then dot, and then it stayed there. You notice that? Because that's what I used last time. It's really pretty friendly and smart. It tries to help you out as much as it can. I hit now. What do I hit? I can hit the Tab key, or I can hit spacebar. Now if I hit spacebar, let me show you what happens. If I hit the spacebar, you notice it pops it in, and then it adds a space. If I do it using the Tab key, it pops it in, and it doesn't leave a space. Okay? All right, now it's going to clear whatever in the first name text box, and when it's done, it's going to clear the one in the last name. Remember now, this is going to work in exactly the order that you put it. Okay? That's really important that you remember that. Now I want to clear the label. Now the label was LBL message, right? Okay, what would you have me do? Seems pretty obvious. I do a dot, and I come down here, and there is no clear. Okay, this is what I want you to write down. For some reason, I don't know why, you're going to hear me complain about it all the time, Microsoft didn't include a clear method for labels yet. I'm hoping in 08 they do, but they didn't. So let me show you how you have to do labels. We have to do labels in exactly the same way we used to have to do text boxes. And it still works for text boxes, it's just that .clear is a little more cleaner. Here's how you have to erase what's in a label. You go to lblmessage.text. Remember the text message, the text property refers to whatever that control says on screen, correct? Okay. Now what you have to do is you have to say the text property is equal to, and we're going to do two double quotes. Now I know this is hard to see on the screen here, but two double quotes. And what that means is take whatever the text property was and just smoosh it down to nothing. All right, does that make sense? That's all you're doing. If I was to do this, watch. If I was to put in the question mark and I typed in "you are a creep," see that message? Okay, watch. When I push F5, I'm going to type something in here. Type some junk in here. Type some junk in here. Now watch what happens when I type clear. It erased what was in here. It erased what was in here, and it typed my little message in here, didn't it? Because let me move this over. That's exactly what I told it to do. Look over here. When they click on this button, erase this text box, erase this text box, and then go to the message and type, "You're a creep." Well, I really don't want it to say that. I want it to not say anything. So in order to erase it, you just use 2 double quotes. Leslie? Well, okay, Leslie's saying, what happens if you did that? Well, that would work, but the truth is, you don't see it? The truth is that inside the label, those spaces are real things, and so the text really does have those spaces in there. You're not really erasing anything. So what I'd like you to do is use these 2 double quotes next to each other. I want you to know that you can also do this to the text boxes. I could have typed. Let me show you a little trick here, by the way. I want you to start learning all the little tricks. I want to copy that line to do something else. So I'm going to put the cursor there, and I'm going to hold the Shift key down, okay? And I'm just going to hit the down arrow, and that will highlight that entire line. I do Control C to copy, and then I do Control V. Okay? Get in the habit of copying and pasting code so you don't have to write so much. So what I want to do is this. I want to come up here and say dot text equals double quotes. Both of those work just fine. This is the old way that we always had to do it with text boxes and labels. This is the new way. Okay? But with labels, you're going to have to remember, you still have to do it this way. This is the old way. Yeah. Which looks cleaner? Which one makes more sense? The clear? You like the clear? Okay. But I just want you to know you can do either way. All right? Now I'm going to put those up there, put that there. Now what would I do? Tell me what I would do here. Jimmy, tell me what I would do if I want to put a comment here that describes what I'm going to do, just like I did up in the other one. It's not a comma, apostrophe, okay, do apostrophe, and what I do is this. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. I don't know why I got in the habit of doing that. I can't tell you. I've just done it for years. I saw it somewhere in a magazine, and I've done it ever since. And I'll say, now clear the text boxes. All right? And I want to do, and I'll keep it right there. I want to do the same thing here for you. Now clear the label. Should I do it that way? I'll put with the message. Now there's no message in there yet, but there will be. I'm going to save everything, and I can either click this or I do Alt F. I'm sorry. I do Control S to save stuff all the time. Okay? So now I've put in a comment, so now you can see what the code does. Comments do not make your program run slower. Don't feel bad about that. Put in as many comments as you want. You could write a book in here if you wanted to. It doesn't slow the computer down. The computer doesn't pay any attention to it. It doesn't make your program bigger. Nothing. Okay? In the old days it did. Now it doesn't. So please comment your code. Now, what we need to do is to do something a little more snazzy with it, and that is this. When they click the print button, what I want it to do is to take whatever is in here, first name, and then when they take the second name, and I want it to say down here in the label, I want it to say, "Hello there, Bob Miller." Okay? Or whatever they type. That would be fun. So if they type Sharon Anderson, it's going to say, "Hello there, Sharon Anderson." I want to show you how to do something like that, okay? First, though, before I make it fancy, let's just have it take whatever's in the first name box, add it to their name, and put it down here. So it just looks nice, okay? I just want to show you how to take something from these text boxes and put them down there. And in order to do that, I've got to make a place for my code so that when they click on this print button, it's going to do that. Okay, so I'm going to quit my program, and somebody tell us what I need to do the very first time, the easiest way, in order to have a place to write my code for the print button. What am I going to do? Jim? Double click it. All right, so double click it, and you'll see once again that it makes a print event handler, just like it did the other ones, for this print button. Okay? Now I said what I wanted to do. Let's review this very carefully. what I want it to do is to just take something from this box and attach it to what they put in this box and put the answer in here. Okay? And so what I want to do is I want to come in here and I want to say that what goes in the label, now what you're going to have to just get used to is the destination, or where you want this stuff to end up, always goes first. The label text, the text for the little label is going to be equal to whatever we put in the first box, txt first, first name, dot text. You got to remember the dot text stuff. It used to be optional, but now it's not. And when you want to connect pieces of letters and statements like that, not numbers and stuff, but just alphabet stuff, in Visual Basic now, rather than using the plus sign, although it still works, Microsoft wants us to use this ampersand. So it's the Shift 7 key on your keyboard. But use the little ampersand to start connecting things. And I want to show you something. What I'm trying to get this thing to do. Whoops. Now it has a blue squiggly. That's because I forgot the dot text. I always forget that. Okay? Now let me just show you what this means. This says, and sometimes you guys, reading it from right to left makes more sense when you're learning. I want you to take whatever they typed in the txt last name text box, okay, whatever they typed, and that's held in the text property, right? Because that's what it says in the box. I want you to take that, and I want you to connect it with the little ampersand. I want you to connect it with whatever they typed in the txt first name text box. Okay, connect that one, and I want you to stick it in the text property of the label, because as you saw before, the text property of a label is just going to display whatever is printed. And so if I push F5 here, and I just do this, if I come up here and I type in Bob Miller and I hit print, you'll notice down here in the label it says Bob Miller. But anybody see anything kind of rinky-dink about that, Karen? Yeah, it did what I said though, didn't it? Didn't it do exactly what I told it to do? Let's get my code down here. Oh, by the way, you see all these windows that pop up when your program's running? They really can obscure your work. What I like to do is I like to hit the little pin cushion button here and just get rid of them. And on these, I get rid of them totally. But what happens is they'll come up to kind of give you a message about what's going on, and then once you click on the code, it disappears by itself. It just gets it out of the way. But when I clicked on print, I said take what's ever in there, and pop it in there. It did what I said. But we need a space in there, don't we? So let's quit. Remember, we got to quit if we're going to make changes. Anybody have any bright ideas about how I could put a space between the first name and the last name? Some of you have done this in other languages. Yes. Jeff? You've had... Yeah. So you're saying add a quote with a space. Now this comes back to what you were saying earlier. And then now what do I have to do? And another ampersand. Now look what I've done here, you guys. I've said take what's ever in this text box and connect a little space, and then keep going, and then connect whatever is in this text box. So it's just like putting together a sentence. Let's see if it works. I think it will. Now this time if I type in Karen Hope and I hit print, now we say Karen Hope and there's a space there and it looks nice. Okay. What if I wanted, let me ask you a question, what if I wanted it to be last name, first name? What would you do? Karen, how would you change Karen Hope? You would just reverse these. You'd say txt last name and then txt first name. Over here you just reverse them. You can do whatever you want. Now one last thing I want you to write down about this part here. When you connect pieces of text together, see this is text, right? That's what we're typing in there. We're not typing in, now let me explain something. You can type in numbers in here. See, I could type in this, But the computer doesn't know that these are numbers. It just thinks they're just part of someone's name or an address or something, and it's just going to go ahead and connect them. So see how it did that? Put that one there, and then it added a space. Anything you type in the text box of the computer is considered as text. It's not like computing sales tax and that kind of stuff. So when you connect text together like that, this is called concatenation. That's a big ugly word, but you probably should know it because that's used all over the place. Concatenation is simply the process of connecting up different pieces of text together to make kind of a sentence. All right? And remember, a lot of things to remember, I know, but the destination of where you want this to end up is always first. So we're saying the text property of this little label that Ron made is going to be equal to whatever they typed in that text box, and we're going to put a little space in here. Remember to put your space. And we're going to also connect whatever's in the last name text box, put them all together, and we're going to store them. All right? And finally, I'm just going to make one little comment up here. Concatenate the first name, add a space, and add the last name to the label called LBL message. Now again, I'm hoping that you really can see the advantage of naming all your objects the way they should be first before you use them. If this would have said label 1, I would have had no idea whether I was talking about this label, or this one. Okay? You just don't want to do that to yourself. Now let me show you one last little trick before we quit, and that is this. Excuse me. You'll notice when we run the when I put stuff in the text box. Jeff, question? How did I get this form to start up in the middle? Anybody remember how we start the form in the middle? Click on the properties of the form, and there is a start position. See down here? Start position, and you're going to set it to center screen. Okay? Yep. When we run this and we type in the text box, let me show you something. You notice it starts over on the left-hand side. Most of the time when I'm doing data entry screens like this, I like this stuff to be over to the right. So let me just show you how to fix that. I'm going to click on this text box, and I'm going to click on this text box. Now I'm going to hold the control key down. Okay, let me do it again. Click on this one first, just with the mouse, one time. Don't double click. If you double click, what's going to happen is it's going to make an event handler for that text box. Well, sometimes that's really handy, and I'll show you how to use that at some point, but that's not what we want. When that happens and you guys have these empty event handlers, I want you to erase them. Okay? You don't want them in there. This is called orphan code, and you don't want them in there, so just highlight both those lines and hit the delete key and get rid of them. That happens, let me show you again, that happens when you double click on something when you mean to single click. All right? And that's creating an event handler for the text box, and we don't want to do that in this project, so I'm going to hit delete. And when you turn in projects to me, I don't want to see a bunch of those event handlers on your project. I don't want to see a bunch of this junk. Okay? I don't want to see one for that and one for that. I don't want to see these empty things in here. If you don't have a reason to have them, I want them out of there. Okay? You don't need any more problems with this. There's enough problems that can crop up. You don't need to add any more and shoot yourself in the foot. Now let me just show you how to change this. I'm going to click one time on the text box. I'm going to hold the control key down, click it one more time, let go of everything, and then I'm going to push F4. And what happens is, this is going to give me a list of all the properties I can change for both of those text boxes. I just do it all at once. And you come down to the bottom, see where it says text alignment? I'm going to drop this little drop down, and I'm going to say to the right. And then I'm going to click on my form, and when I run it this time and I type, you'll notice that the cursor's over here, like that. Yeah. All right. Now, I think we've covered an awful lot in these first 5 lessons. I've shown you how to create a project, where to save it, how to add controls, how to change properties, how to change methods, how to create event handlers, and also showed you how to properly name your objects by using TXT for text boxes, BTN for buttons, and so forth. Make sure that when you do your project that you rename all your objects first before you make any event handlers. If you mess up and you want to go back and change it, you delete that event handler. Change your color on your form, change the text property of your form so it looks nice, and you'll have a really nice looking application to start with. And then you can always go back and jazz up the form, change colors, add a picture. You can add sound, you can have sound playing in the background, you can do all kinds of very cool things. You just have to learn it a little bit at a time. And I think in this first series we've covered a lot of good things to show you. And I'm just trying to think off the top of my head if there's anything else that I want to show you at the moment. Probably not. I think this has given you a pretty good introduction. And as we close our program now, I'm going to make sure I save it. I click it a couple times. You got to be very careful. You don't want to lose this stuff. You can imagine how you feel if this got lost. I mean, we've spent all this time on it. Go File, Close Solution. We're going to make sure we can go back and get it. I'm going to get out of Visual Studio completely. I'll go back in and launch it as if it was, like tomorrow or something. It comes up. It also comes up, I want to show you, if you want it to, it'll come up with this start page, and it goes out to the internet, and it's grabbing all the latest information about Visual Studio and programming. Now, sometimes this is absolutely overwhelming. This is like getting 10 newspapers on your front door. And I have to tell you, most of the time, I don't pay any attention to this. And then one of you will email me and say, "Hey, did you see this new thing?" And I say, "No, I didn't see the new thing." But sometimes it doesn't hurt to just take a look at that. It also has a listing of the projects that you worked on last. Here's something that we worked on, or that I was working on earlier. But you can make it so that this doesn't come up at all when you start a project if you want to, and I'll show you that in the next little short video. I just want to show you how to set some of the properties to that thing. But if you you notice I just get rid of it. If I want to go back to my solution, I can say Recent Projects. There they are there, recent files and stuff. Or I can just say Open a Project. Don't do Website, and don't do Open File. Do Open Project. It's a whole project. And remember that I put mine on Drive D, and I made a little folder for myself called BB105 Projects. There it is. Now, Karen, what do I do next? What do you want me to do next? Do I say Open here? No. I double click, and now what do I do? If I remember, I can double click on that SLN file, that's a solution file, or I can highlight it once and say Open. And this comes up like this, and it has all these properties. And if I want to see my Solution Explorer, what do I do? If I remember? That little, yes, that guy right there. And this will show all the files and folders and things that I make. You can make folders, you can add pictures to it. I'll show you as we go along all kinds of things that you can do. Okay? Good job. Now, in the next little segment here, we're going to take a little break, but when we come back, I want to show you how to set up some options in Visual Studio, just so you can change fonts and change colors, and just give you a quick little idea of how this works. And that'll be a very short lesson, and then we're done.